Napoleon. Let's forget the height jokes. Napoleon Bonaparte didn't conquer Europe by being angry and vertically challenged. He did it by turning warfare into a meat grinder. Before him, armies politely marched into position. Napoleon, he invented the corps system, splitting his Grande Armée into self-sustaining mini-armies that moved so aggressively fast, enemy generals genuinely thought he was teleporting. At the Battle of Austerlitz, he intentionally weakened his own right flank to bait the combined Russian and Austrian empires into a massive trap, crushing them so badly the 1,000-year-old Holy Roman Empire ceased to exist. He was an absolute artillery obsessive, while other commanders treated cannons as basic support. Napoleon masked them into terrifying grand batteries to blow massive holes through enemy infantry lines before his cavalry swept in to clean up the pieces. He didn't just beat his enemies, he psychologically broke them. By the time his reign ended, over 3 million soldiers were dead, and the rest of Europe had to form 7 different military coalitions just to finally keep him on an island. Stalin. Joseph Stalin didn't need brilliant tactical maneuvers. He weaponized an entire continent and drowned his enemies in sheer numbers. When the Axis invaded, Stalin didn't panic. He threw bodies at the problem on a scale human history had never seen. He famously issued Order 227, not one step back. Retreat meant facing his own execution squads. His Red Army wasn't just a military force, it was an unstoppable, freezing tsunami of steel and infantry. He relocated thousands of factories to the Ural Mountains while under fire, churning out tens of thousands of T-34 tanks, creating an industrial war machine that crushed the German Eastern Front. Stalin was so utterly ruthless that he had previously purged his own top generals just to ensure absolute paranoia and obedience. You didn't just fear fighting Stalin, you feared working for him. His strategy was simple and terrifying. Outsuffer, outproduce, and outdie the opponent until the Soviet flag flew over a ruined Berlin. Shaka Zulu. Before Shaka Zulu, warfare in southern Africa was basically a chaotic skirmish. Shaka turned it into an industrialized slaughterhouse. He threw out the traditional throwing spears, calling them cowards' weapons, and armed his warriors with the Ikawa, a heavy, short stabbing spear designed for brutal hand-to-hand combat. You didn't throw it, you looked your enemy in the eye as you used it. He forced his regiments, the Impi, to march 50 miles a day barefoot over thorns just to callous their feet, making them the fastest, most mobile infantry on the continent. Shaka invented the terrifying buffalo horns formation. The heavy chest pinned the enemy down, the fast horns completely encircled them, and the reserve loins waited to slaughter anyone who tried to run. Surrender wasn't an option. His discipline was so merciless that retreating meant facing his executioners back home. In just a decade, he transformed a minor tribe of maybe 1,500 people into an unstoppable military juggernaut of 50,000 elite warriors, forging an empire through pure, unmatched aggression. Simón Bolívar. The Spanish Empire expected a polite colonial rebellion. Simón Bolívar gave them a continent-spanning nightmare. Bolívar wasn't just a general. He was an unstoppable force of willpower who weaponized geography itself. He famously issued the brutal war-to-the-death decree, a chilling, absolute order stating that any Spaniard who didn't actively fight against their own empire would be systematically executed. No prisoners, no neutrality. To outmaneuver the royalists, he did the impossible. He marched his army of fierce, machete-wielding plainsmen straight through the freezing, oxygen-starved peaks of the Andes. Men and horses literally froze to death on the ascent, but the hardened survivors dropped out of the clouds to completely annihilate the stunned Spanish forces at Boyacá. He didn't just defeat the greatest empire of his era, he exhausted it, fighting relentlessly across lethal jungles and swamps until he had violently ripped 6 modern countries from the grip of the Spanish crown. Alexander the Great fought constantly for 15 years and never lost a single battle. He didn't rely on luck. He used a brutally efficient military machine. His front line was the Macedonian phalanx, blocks of infantry armed with 18-foot spears called sarissas. They formed an impenetrable wall of spikes that pinned massive enemy armies in place. Once the enemy was stuck, Alexander personally led the elite companion cavalry to smash into their flanks. The results were mathematically devastating. At the Battle of Gaugamela, he faced a Persian army of over 200,000 men with only 47,000 soldiers. By driving a precise wedge straight at the Persian king, he collapsed their entire empire in an afternoon. When the island city of Tyre refused to surrender, Alexander didn't negotiate. He spent 7 months building a 1-kilometer land bridge out of rocks and timber directly through the ocean. Once his siege towers reached the walls, he massacred 8,000 citizens and sold 30,000 survivors into slavery to prove a point. By age 30, he had violently conquered 2 million square miles of territory. Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan didn't just build an empire. He orchestrated the largest demographic shift in human history through sheer military efficiency. The Mongol army was a hypermobile force composed entirely of cavalry. Every soldier rode with multiple horses to ensure they never had to slow down, allowing them to cover up to 100 miles a day. Their primary weapon was the composite bow, which had a draw weight of 160 pounds and could pierce armor from 350 yards away. They perfected the feigned retreat, a tactical maneuver where they would pretend to flee for days, drawing enemy armies into exhausted, disorganized pursuit before suddenly turning around to encircle and slaughter them. Genghis Khan weaponized psychological terror. His rule was binary: surrender immediately and pay tribute, or face total extermination. When the Khwarezmian Empire foolishly executed his ambassadors, he didn't just defeat them, he diverted a river to wipe their birthplace off the map. By the end of his campaigns, his armies had killed an estimated 40 million people, physically cooling the planet by reducing global carbon emissions. Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar didn't just defeat his enemies, he out-engineered them. His legions were not just soldiers, they were highly disciplined combat construction crews. During the Gallic Wars, Caesar's army killed an estimated 1 million people and enslaved another million. His most terrifying trait was his speed and logistical brilliance. When Germanic tribes retreated across the massive Rhine River, assuming they were safe, Caesar didn't find boats. He had his men build a 400-meter wooden bridge across the raging river in just 10 days. He marched his army across, terrorized the tribes for 18 days, marched back, and dismantled the bridge just to prove he could reach them anywhere. His masterpiece of warfare was the Siege of Alesia. Facing a fortified city of 80,000 Gauls, Caesar built an 18-kilometer wall around them to starve them out. When a massive relief army of 250,000 Gauls arrived to attack him from behind, he didn't retreat. He simply built a second, 21-kilometer outward-facing wall around his own army, fighting in both directions simultaneously, and crushed them all. Attila the Hun. Attila the Hun didn't just fight the Roman Empire. He turned it into his personal ATM through extreme violence. He commanded a massive confederation of nomadic horsemen whose primary tactic was overwhelming speed. Hunnic warriors accurately shot composite bows while riding at a full gallop, creating an ancient wall of suppressing fire. In close combat, they used lassos to drag heavy infantry straight into the dirt. Attila's extortion racket was mathematically staggering. He forced the Eastern Roman Empire to pay an annual tribute of 2,100 pounds of solid gold just to keep him away from Constantinople. When they missed a payment, he brutally marched in and increased the fee to 6,000 pounds. He didn't just raid cities, he erased them. When he sacked the fortified city of Aquileia, his army destroyed it so thoroughly that survivors fled into disease-ridden lagoons, inadvertently founding the city of Venice. He devastated the Balkans and slaughtered his way down the Italian peninsula, proving Rome couldn't stop a highly organized mob of extortionists on horseback.